Hello again, and welcome to a financial thought leadership podcast, Banking on Experience, sponsored by CRMNEXT, the banking CRM, where we simplify work, drive growth, and deliver on experience. This podcast is meant to empower individuals working in the financial industry with stories, experiences, and knowledge straight from the source. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and stay tuned for an awesome show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Banking on Experience. I'm your host, James Gilbert. Today, we are joined by Whitney Anderson-Harrell, Chief Community Development Officer at Michigan State University Federal Credit Union. She's also the president of the Desk Drawer Fund. It's a foundation supporting credit union communities. Welcome to the show, Whitney.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Likewise. You know, you did a webinar with us a few months ago, and it was a big hit. So we're actually going to be talking about some of what we talked about on that webinar. But today's topic is all about serving the unbanked. And we're going to define what that means for all of you. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But before we do that, I like to have the audience get to know you a little bit on a personal level. So is it okay if I ask you a few fun little questions so they can get to know you?
Absolutely.
Who's your hero?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. You know, I would say both of my parents are my heroes. They've had, my entire life, they've had different things that they've worked on and worked through from both a personal and professional standpoints. And just seeing their resilience. My mom is white and my dad is Black in a time when that was a little more difficult to come together as a couple and to get married, 40 plus years ago, and just seeing their resilience and their ability to stay positive and work towards their goals, both professionally and personally. That's why they're both my heroes. So
love it. One more question.
Yes.
What's your perfect day outside of work?
My perfect day. Wow. I love to be outside hosting parties with families and friends. I'm like social and I love to have a good time. So I think that would be the perfect day for me.
Oh, I like it. All right, let's dive into the topic. So first of all, tell the audience, why are you so passionate about this topic? I know it rings near and dear to your heart. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I think serving the underserved or banking the unbanked is so important for our communities to be successful. And if we think about why isn't it important to everyone that everyone have an opportunity to have access to capital of any kind? Starting out with financial literacy and having an account at a financial institution, that is part of the core of being a part of a community and having, you don't have to think twice about walking into a financial institution and having access to funds or direct deposit for your money or thinking about things being saved. I think that should be something that's available to everyone, along with that education that comes along with that, which is just so important for people.
Let's talk about how we are, because I think that the audience will likely want us to define, like, what do we mean by unbanked and underserved? And let's talk about that for a sec.
Absolutely. When you think about unbanked, the term really refers to adults or young adults that do not use credit unions or banks or financial institutions or any other kind of institution in that capacity. And these individuals typically use cash, money orders, or prepaid cards to process their transactions. And I think, when you don't have that access, you're also paying more to use those services, whether it's the money order or the prepaid cards or things like that. So it makes it even harder to get things done.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because when we think about like anything related to finance, you oftentimes have to have good credit in some fashion. And this has always fascinated me, like my whole life, because I never understood, like, when right out of high school and I was in college, I never understood, like, well, how am I supposed to have good credit if I just barely was able to start having credit?
Yeah.
And I think that this also applies to some of the younger generation also that's, trying to establish themselves as adults. And
Mhm.
oftentimes I think that part, no fault to any financial institution, but I just think that's an area that we need to solve for, and I know that we did an we did an episode, I want to say it was maybe 34 or something like that. And it was with a company called eCredible. And eCredible goes in and they like look at uh, different things outside of just the credit bureau, like utility bills and
Yep.
cell phone bills. And then they work with like a credit union to then incorporate that into their loans and their mortgages. And I think that is a fantastic model to help serve the underserved and the unbanked. And it was Steve Eli, who's the CEO over there, and it was kind of eye opening to me. I didn't know services like that existed. I was like, man, where was this when I was growing up?
Yeah, there are quite a few organizations. Another one that really tries to look at things differently is Happy Money as well. And, honestly, if you work with credit unions, specifically credit unions that talk about really working and being passionate about these things, you'll find that credit unions make a lot of those same concessions for people as well. I think from an MSUFCU perspective, a big portion of who we work with is college students. Sometimes there are opportunities for students that come in that maybe their parents opened up things in their names. And so they're coming in not only with, for example, no credit, which is where most college students come in, but then we have students that come in with bad credit to no fault of their own. They didn't even know. They find this out when they're sitting across from us trying to open up their first account. And so how do we have some of those conversations and then set people up for the success that they want to have in their life from a financial literacy perspective with accounts? And I think when we start to think about a lot of those things, like it is like serving the unbanked population is so important to be able to give people that, that equity that we all are working towards. And I think it's not just about like things being fair, but being equitable as well, that not everyone's going to have that same starting place, but how can we get everyone, to have access to everything is so important.
And I also think that, as financial institutions, naturally, the audience or I guess the members that we help serve, um, there's communities that just need the financial help, right? And
Mhm.
there's I think some of that ties into some of the DEI work that this country is trying to figure out and trying to work through. Let's talk a little bit about that. So how can a credit union incorporate DEI more to ensure that they are serving and developing those communities and relationships in those areas?
Absolutely. I think, it's important that credit unions look at the communities that they serve and, where are your branches? And for us as well, like all of our branches are in very different communities. So it's taking the time to not only look at that, but then take that deep dive. When you have a variety of locations with different populations in each one of those, it's good to explore some of those organizations that your credit union is supporting so that you can then reach out to local organizations that surround your branches to be able to provide some of that opportunity for support in different ways. But one of the things that's really important when you're doing some of that research is making sure that those organizations that you may want to partner with, that they really align with your values. Do they support the historically marginalized groups? It's important to show support for all of the different charities and organizations that have those same priorities as yours, but you want to make sure that you're impacting the people that you're trying to impact. And when you're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and DEI from that perspective, it can be a difficult conversation for some organizations because, just like you just said, this is a journey that we're taking as a country. And that means very different things to different people. But it's important for all of us to work together to try to keep moving in the right direction with all of these things. But I think we as credit unions, we're right there in the communities and we have an opportunity to do that. And I think it's part of, the mantra for all credit unions is people helping people. And how do we do that? It's being present with our members and meeting them where they are and figuring out the needs and doing the best we can to serve them. So.
I love what you just said. We are doing a webinar this month actually on unconscious bias, and it is such a real thing. And I think that sometimes when we're addressing DEI, we have to have our leadership team especially go through some unconscious bias training, because look, there is no way to shake it. Everybody has it. Everybody has some unconscious bias. And it's a matter of, if we're really trying to make change and solve for those issues, I think that one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to recognize, all right, we have it. All right, so now what's step one? Step one is when you get into meetings as a leader, you leave that at the door, right? And you look at everything objectively, that your eyes are not always the right eyes to be looking them through. I think that that's super duper important. Let's actually move on to another question that I have for you. What can credit unions stop doing today to help serve the unbanked population?
I think you actually just touched on that, and that's actually being aware of what you are doing or what you are not doing, and then being willing to make those changes. I think a lot of people are worried about credit risk and what does it mean to help this population and how it could affect them, rather than thinking about it from the flip side is, why would we not help people and get people to the best possible place that they can be to have a successful life? Because that's, as a general statement, that's what people want. They want to be successful. They want to have that independence and work for what they want in life. And I think as credit unions, that is part of why we were formed, because credit unions are cooperatives, and they were formed because people could not, have the same access for banks. And that's where we came in. And I think just with that same feeling of that's why we started, is the very exact reason why we need to do those same things, for others, and just not to forget our roots and where we came from. And I think that in itself is a hard thing to do, because, this is a fast changing industry. There are so many credit unions that are growing quickly. We have credit unions that are closing every day. And it's important that all of us are still working together as an industry to work with the unbanked population. It's so important.
I love that you brought up why credit unions were created to begin with. I mean, we're like such big believers in this at CRMNEXT. Like, we just believe so much in the value and the community involvement. We believe that credit unions are the reason why our country is still afloat right now during the pandemic. They were that important to so much of what was going on. And I just can't stress enough for the listeners that are listening, it really is your roots. That's what it's about. And it's so funny how so many things can tie back to that, but it really is such a valuable, promise and mission statement from just like the credit union industry as a whole. And that's that you were meant to do this. This is what you were built for.
Absolutely. With MSUFCU, that's actually where our foundation name came from. So it's called the Desk Drawer Fund, because literally the credit union started in a desk drawer on Michigan State's campus, because professors didn't have enough capital to be able to get a loan from some of the banks. And so they all came together, a group of them, faculty and staff, and started the credit union in a drawer. And our first CEO was actually a woman. And that is unheard of in financial institutions when you think back, 50 years ago and what that meant for the industry. So I think just starting to understand a lot of those things, it's just really inspiring to think about the credit union movement and all of the support and stances they've made for, for women and for, the BIPOC communities, and that there are opportunities there. And I think that also speaks to just credit unions providing that space, which that in itself is an anomaly. And I'm just so proud to be a part of that with MSUFCU, because we work hard to have, our focus on being equitable and having a focus on DEI and doing the best that we can to serve our employees and members. So
Love that. It's interesting because there's also sort of this indirect thing that I don't think gets talked about enough. And we also did an episode on this actually, and it's a language barrier. And I think that this is another area that we can help figure out and solve for as credit unions, and even just in financial services as a whole. I think that there needs to be more language support for our other fellow Americans that are not necessarily from this country, or maybe they are, but they speak language. And I think that that's something that is really big, and it's an area that I think that I wanted to talk to you a little bit on. So how does language fit into this?
Absolutely. I think, for us specifically, we are working towards having a more robust translation opportunity from both a website, call center, e-services, like branches, all those different perspectives. But internally, we've always had a group of individuals who work for the credit union who are, whether they're bilingual, multilingual, we ask them to help our members. And I think we do a really great job at just working with the tools and opportunities that we have, and then working hard to expand on those. So we started a program called the Logros program, which is actually for our Spanish speaking members, where we have opportunities for all the different dialects who do speak Spanish to be able to call into that pilot and have access. But one of the things that we are working on is, we're working to have that program expand. And we're really excited to have the translation services that'll be starting in January of 2022, which will, provide that support in a lot of different languages instead of just Spanish, which Spanish is so important to us, but we don't want people to feel like they don't have an opportunity to speak in their native language and feel comfortable talking about their finances, because that is so important. One of the schools that we work with, they have 28 languages spoken at that school, and we provide written statements for everyone, but we want to be able to provide that verbal support as well. And that's why this is so important, to be able for people, especially when we're looking at the unbanked population. It is because they can't, a lot of them, because they don't speak the same language, and they may not understand all of the services or have that trust, because if you can't speak the same language as someone, you may not have that same trust. And so that is, one of those things that we're working on and prioritizing, to make sure that as we go out and meet people in their communities, that we can speak the language and that we do have the products and services that are needed. And a big part of that is, word of mouth and talking to people. And that's why the language barriers are so important. We also have language guides that we have available to all of our employees. And I think that's another thing from a DEI perspective that's so important. We are talking to people about what is the right terminology to use when you're speaking about groups. Do you use the word minority, for example, or do you use marginalized community? Do you use BIPOC? We talk about all of those things at our credit union, because it's important for people to know what is the right terminology to use. But the thing is, that's a living and breathing document that we continually are changing, because those things change. Yeah. And it's important to stay relevant and, make sure that you're making not only your members, but your employees feeling confident and comfortable in what they're talking about and the words that they're using with their own language. So you can kind of think about it in a lot of different ways, which is, absolutely, it makes it very dynamic and sometimes difficult for people. But I think the best way that any of us learn is to keep practicing and doing the best that you can every day. And then eventually you get to a place where it's just second nature. And I think that's what we're all working towards.
It's interesting. When I was in college, it was like my very first job that I had. I worked at Verizon Wireless, and I was at this store, and we had quite a few folks that spoke Spanish, and they would come into the store, but none of the staff could help them. So I actually started just like Googling stuff and learning how to just say just small little things. And
Mhm.
I'm not kidding you, like I was one of the best sales reps because literally that everyone started coming into the store because they knew
Mhm.
that they at least had someone that was willing to try with them. I think that's
Mhm.
really the key. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a long time ago, right? And now we
Mhm.
have like Google Translate, like we have all these things. I mean, you can
Yeah.
literally like type in what you want to say in English, and it might not be a perfect translation, but most of the time they can,
Mhm.
and it will literally do the audio for you too. So there's technology now at our
Yes.
fingertips that can also help serve this. I mean, I ended up going on a mission, and now I speak Spanish, so it's actually so
That's
interesting.
awesome.
But I just think that it's just the little effort that I
Mhm.
think sometimes we're missing. Like language barriers we get so scared about, and I would even say DEI people get very scared about,
Yes.
because they're touchy things, but you have to try. And I think that if you
Mhm.
can put forth an effort to try, that actually can win over their trust. Because look, they know you might not be able to speak their language. They can't speak yours. So imagine they're trying, they're coming in and trying. They're like, well, I might stumble on my words, or I might not be able to get it all out. Well, you're going to be doing the same thing. So you're in the same boat, and it creates a level of
Mhm.
trust that is uncomfortable. But I mean, honestly, that will create relationships that will last forever.
100%. We all need to do that more in life. I think things would, you know, I'm always like, if we complained less and just worked on some things together, we'd be so much further along.
Let's transition a little bit and talk about the youth. I know that we had mentioned this in the very beginning of the of
Yeah.
conversation, but I want to hit on it again. When we had previously met, we had talked about CSA programs.
Mhm.
Let's dive into that a little bit. How can a CSA program help establish a more stable future financially for the unbanked?
That's a great question. So, one of the ways that CSA's program really, which CSAs are children savings accounts programs, help the unbanked population is that for many of our students, and the reason why we started working with them is to provide that trust at a young age. And we offer a program, and our program is called Lansing Save, and it's an opt-out program. So that means every kindergarten student in the Lansing School District gets one of these accounts when they start school. We put the first $5 in, and then we offer opportunities for financial education. Actually, every month we do a 30-minute session while the students are in school. We also provide that opportunity for them to make a deposit, whether it's $5 or 5 cents that they found, or 1 cent, on the way to school. But it starts showing that trust and building towards something. And that is just so important. One of the ways that we do this, and that the reasons why the program is successful, is we actually are giving everyone an account. But what we're doing is we're partnering with the school district, as well as, for us, the city of Lansing. So we have it set up as an umbrella account so that the students don't have to use their social security number to have the account. We can use their student ID. So this is a big relief, as most of the students in Lansing School District are receiving free or reduced lunches. And we don't want to provide an opportunity for students to have something that impacts their family's income the same. So that's the great thing about children's savings accounts, is they have that protection to not have that impact on anything for the parents. And that also provides an environment for parents to feel comfortable. And then we meet with them, the parents as well, a couple times a year to talk about the importance of having an account. And that's where, as we talked about the school that has so many different languages, we're trying to provide all of that, the translator services, when we go meet with parents, to have the conversations, be able to explain the accounts, and then be able to open up accounts for parents too, because this may be their first time having an account. And that's why, I am so passionate about this, because it just starts with the one time, and then, having conversations. And just like you talked about with Verizon, after people do start to build that trust and have that loyalty, because they understand that, we are going to do the best that we can to provide all those language services for them, that then people start coming, and you see more and more people coming in because they know they have the support that they need to feel the trust that their money will be safe, and that they have access to their money, and that they're saving and building with both their child and themselves. So with the children's savings accounts, we provide these incentives throughout the year to save. We have community champions that actually put deposits into the accounts for the students. We have teachers that'll put $1 in each one of their students' accounts. We have great participation with the communities, and that really ties into the community believing in the students as well, which the statistics are around, if a student has between just $100 saved towards going to college or any post-secondary education, that they are 3 times more likely to continue, because it means that they have something saved and they're working towards it and planning towards it. And so when we're thinking about CSAs, that reason right there, like to have someone, believing in you and then investing in you, can make a huge difference for our students, and to feel comfortable with the fact that, yeah, you're going to go do something and you're going to go be amazing. And we're right here believing in you, and you're putting money in and we're putting money in, and you're going to be successful. And I think that's one of the reasons why CSAs are so successful, and why we're seeing that expansion with those accounts across the US. I mean, you look at, they started in San Francisco, and they are like, it's like wildfire. There's so many communities that are taking these accounts and doing amazing things for their students. And we're in our 7th year right now. So we have 6th grade K through 6 students, and we're getting to the point where they're going to be, in this next couple of years, graduating and really going out and using these accounts. And we're excited for that. And we're excited for them to be able to utilize that and have that support. And we'll be able to really then see the impact that having that financial literacy on a monthly basis, K through 12, to see what that impact is on the students' lives. So it's pretty exciting.
I'm so glad that you talked about the history of it, because I was going to ask you, I was going to say, well, what's been the adoption? Like, how has that happened? Because I'll be first to tell you, man, do I wish that this existed in here in Utah where my kids are going to school. We ended up, so I have 4 kids, and we ended up having to create, savings accounts. And we even created their own checking account for each one of them at our credit union, but we went in there and did it manually, and like we're managing it. But it's been a game changer for us. Like our kids, like when they get their allowance or anything like that, or they go mow the lawn and they get paid for it, those kinds of things, they know, like, hey, all right, I know what's on my debit card. They know their balance, like I think that it's so important to educate, especially as parents too. So any listeners out there that have kids, like if you don't have your children with an account and you're not teaching them about these things, like you need to do it. But Whitney, we're at time. I would love for you to tell, where can the listeners connect with you and talk about these things on a personal level?
Yeah, definitely reach out. I'm at MSU Federal Credit Union. I have LinkedIn. You can check us out on the destorefund.org or MSUFCU.org as well. And my email is on there, phone number. Definitely, please reach out to if there's anything that we can do. We also have a QSO called Evergreen, where we have opportunities to really help and consult in a lot of different ways for all of these things that we just talked about. So definitely, please don't hesitate to reach out.
I've got to look up the QSO now. I didn't know you were doing that. That's going to be interesting. So QSO is called Evergreen?
Yes, and we are in the brand new stages with everything, but we are so excited about that opportunity and the additional impact that we're able to make with the community, from both the financial education as well as DEI and fintechs and investment opportunity. So it's been a really awesome journey to get started on.
So exciting. Whitney, thank you so much for joining us. You are always a good guest.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's great to see you.